Stardust, 2007 fantasy film directed by Matthew Vaughn, based on a book written by Neil Gaiman. It stars Charlie Cox, Claire Danes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Mark Strong, Robert De Niro, and has small appearances also from Henry Cavill, Sienna Miller, Peter O'Toole, Ricky Gervais, and Ian McKellen as the narrator. Story-wise, it feels very much like a classic fairy tale, yet it does have distinct elements of Gaiman's writing as well, such as alternate worlds and gateways to those worlds. The story takes place in the early 19th century England, in a small village called Wall, because of a stone wall that runs next to it. Apparently, that wall is a border between Earth and a magical kingdom called Stormhold. One day, a boy crosses over from our side, meets a girl, spends the night, goes back. 9 months later, he receives a package, which is his newly born son Tristan. Fast forward 18 years. Tristan is a poor young man working as a shop clerk, but he dreams of a bigger world out there. He's also trying to win the heart of a superficial young lady from the village, but he's kind of a dork, he's not the most handsome one. And in desperation, he vows to bring her back the falling star that they witness one night, falling somewhere beyond the wall. He goes over, but things quickly get complicated. First of all, as it turns out, the fallen star has taken the shape of Claire Danes, and she's in danger, being chased by witches who want to eat her heart to achieve everlasting life. Also, she's got a ruby necklace with her that is the key to winning the kingdom, and the old king's sons, who are sort of rivals, are after it. With especially one of them, called Septimus, not shying away from basically anything to get it. There's also Tristan's mother still out in the world to be found. There's magic, ghosts, evil princes, charming ladies, and flying pirates with Robert De Niro as a closeted drag queen pirate captain. And all these elements together create a narrative, which surprisingly isn't all over the place. You'd expect that with so much stuff going on, it would veer very quickly into nonsense, but it actually doesn't. I think it's very efficiently using its first 20-25 minutes to clearly set up all the major players, explain what they're after, what are the stakes for everyone, and give us a glimpse of how it all eventually will fit together. And despite those multiple storylines, they're all very elegantly converging around the single thread of the character of Yvain, which is the fallen star lady, who on the other hand, along with Tristan, has a straightforward journey ahead of her to get back to the wall. So she and him are getting back to the wall, and all the other people, chasing around them. In many ways, it reminded me of the classic Princess Bride in not just the accessible narrative, but also by how fearlessly it embraces the fantasy elements, both the epic ones, but also the absolutely silly ones. It's kind of unapologetic in what it's doing, and it works. It's just very fun to watch. I think it also helps that much like a lot of Gaiman's writing, despite it being directed mostly at younger audiences, it's not completely sanitized and safe like much of modern fairy tales. I'm looking at Disney here mostly. Which makes sense. I mean, when you go back to the origins of fairy tales, these were pretty brutal stories to begin with, not shying away from elements, not fit for children, as we would today say. And Stardust, in some ways, taps into that. There's a lot of killing, there's some sexual innuendo, there's violence and cruelty and blood and so on. And still, it's not over the top. So I'd say it's still completely fine for children. In fact, I think it's better to avoid pretending that all this adult stuff doesn't exist at all. I think the special effects and makeup are great. The performances are enjoyable across the board. The humor works. There were many moments where I laughed out loud. The movie has real heart, and most of all, it has a great sense of adventure. You feel like you're with the characters, exploring this unique world, rich with different characters, different locations, and various fantasy elements. And that there's also, a bunch of stuff going on outside of the main narrative, which further enhances that feeling that this is pretty real, that this is an actual world. I do think there are some minor flaws. Most of all, I felt like there was an issue with the pacing. I felt the movie was slightly too long, and it does drag a little bit towards the end. But I'm fine with that, because overall, it's just been such a really pleasant watch. A funny, witty, entertaining example of fantasy that is not sanitized for children, but also, on the other hand, not edgy and dark on purpose. And so it ends up hitting that sweet spot and being a cool film for people of all ages.